Hey everyone, welcome back to the Unfiltered Breakdown. Please like and subscribe on our YouTube. And also, if you want to be up to date on anything that's Encinitas Unfiltered related, you can go to www.encinistasunfiltered.com. Steven, how are you doing today?
Hey man, it's been good. It's been a good week. I'm still riding high on the Alexander Usyk win
Oh
for the
man.
first undisputed heavyweight
The-
champion in 25 years since Lennox Lewis. Man, I'm excited. I'm happy I made my call for Usyk. I'm riding the Ukrainian wave. Let's go.
Hey, you know what? He's undisputed for 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever it is. So
We'll see
that's
if
some
he's just gonna.
BS.
Yeah, yeah. We're
But
not gonna get into that one. Don't frustrate
don't
me
rile you
with.
up. Don't
Yeah.
rile you
Oh
up.
yeah. No,
Oh
no.
man.
You're gonna wind me up. I'm gonna start going on
Um,
boxing commissions and how painful they can be. But Usyk deserved it. I'm happy. I'm always excited to see when some of the breakdown stuff kind of comes to fruition in the fights.
right.
So I was fun seeing Usyk's skills be able to really put it out, his heart put it out. There's the story of him. If you don't know about Usyk, it's fun to look into. I mean, maybe a little sad, even when asking how he felt about winning, he was sad that his
Right.
dad wasn't there to be with him in that, his country is at war. But man, did he have the heart and determination to go through anything in that fight?
Yeah, I mean, he went out there and did exactly what he needed to do, and Fury, for whatever reason, just let off the gas. And hey, and he got caught with some big shots.
Yeah.
But that might be an episode for another day. But today we're talking about UFC 302. So that's taking place actually in Newark, New Jersey, at the Prudential Center, and that's Saturday, June 1st at 7 p.m. That's when the main card starts. But today we're actually just only going to talk about two fights. We're going to talk about the championship fight, which is Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier, and we're going to talk about Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa, which is also a really interesting matchup. So the tail of the tape, we have Islam Makhachev, who's 25-1. He's a minus 550 favorite against Dustin Poirier, who's 30-8. He's a plus 375 dog. I mean, yeah, I think at that point you got to put money on the dog, right? Just for the sheer numbers on the betting, because
He
there's
is
no
a
money to be made at 550.
50.
So
Yeah, at minus 550, you're not getting
you're gonna throw $100
anything.
out on
Yeah.
Poirier and see what happens,
Yeah.
But some of the most notable wins for Makhachev, his last fights, he's KO'd Volk, which I think a lot of us remember. Volk came in very short notice, and then he beat Volk by unanimous decision. He submitted Charles Oliveira. That was a great fight. I rewatched that one. Knocked out Bobby Green. Submitted Hooker, Moises, Dober. And another notable win for a top contender is he beat Arman by unanimous decision. Granted, Arman came in on a 2-week notice, but still impressive nonetheless because he is a top contender now. I think he's like top 4, right? And then
yeah, he's stormed up into the top of the rankings the last little while. He's really trying to put his name out there, especially with his own win over Charles Oliveira, trying to get into contention.
Right. And that was his last fight, and he looked really good.
Oh yeah,
absolutely dominated him. And then Poirier, so he beat Benoit St. Denis, and that was in March. Then he got knocked out by Gaethje, which is ironic because he knocked out Gaethje before that in what was that, April 14th of 2018, and that was an amazing fight. And then he submitted Chandler, lost to Oliveira, beat McGregor twice. Oh, my cousin, my boy. Beat Hooker, lost to Khabib. But really, I mean, he's lost to like Michael Johnson, but he's beaten Holloway. But I mean, everyone's lost to Khabib, so I mean, it's, Dustin has a really, really impressive record, and he's fought the best of the best for a really long time.
Yeah, he really anchored himself on the top of the lightweight division. When he had to fight Benoit Saint Denis, that was kind of his obligatory give another ranked person a chance to usurp him, right? We got to see Justin Gaethje do the same with Rafael Fiziev.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of see them did their one, give another contender a shot to try to take them out. He proved that, he was still a step better than those guys. And, now he's right back in contention, right? He's always kind of been in that honorary title position.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really good matchup. What are some of your thoughts on Islam Makhachev?
He is the follow-up to Khabib Nurmagomedov. They were the same training. He was famous for being his training partner, which, in some parts kind of hurt him in that everyone is obviously going to compare him all the time. And they are not the same type of fighter, even though they've had a lot of similar training, right? So one of the biggest areas that they're known for is their grappling. This is where they probably have some of the most similarities in how they like to do stuff. Uh, Islam Makhachev is a master of sport in Sambo. So naturally that kind of mixes some of the grappling styles. He has, and if you compare just in his straight wrestling, he may not be a straight better folk style wrestler than some people in the division, but I think it's that all around grappling that really makes them stand out. So with that, he does mix in different type of takedowns, and he really does well with more kind of judo style / sambo style trips and throws in the clinch.
Right. I noticed when I was looking back at one of his fights, and I forget who it was. Maybe it was Hooker. I think it was Hooker. He like grabbed his leg and like threw a punch, and the punch wasn't anything significant to knock him down, but I think it was the action of him grabbing and throwing at the same time. He was able to get on top of him and just kind of handle business. Because when he gets on top of guys, he kind of almost like grabs him and holds them to where they're like just stuck. Like they're stuck in the sitting up position with their legs stretched out and they can't move.
Yes, you get to see a lot of the kind of the Dagestani group, even partial,
Right.
It being the AKA team, they all work together. Kind of some trends that they do with that grappling, right? One of them is, they excel at wrestling people against the cage, right? For so
Right.
long, the cage was kind of used as a main defense for people to defend against the grappling, taking a wide base, using it to support them and do stuff like wall walking, using the shoulders to kind of like climb up in that. And they really developed a game to take advantage of people in those positions and kind of take away that advantage for the people trying to defend against them. So one of the things you'll see, is that they'll be kind of low on the legs, grab, slip that out from under them. The other thing that's kind of like the Dagestani handcuff, getting control of the wrist, kind of trying to put it under their body. And you get to see their strength and ability really come through in that moment, that they are just controlling people under them and taking away a chance to defend against them. Now, where Khabib was really able and really focused on the like, oh, I'm going to smash my foes, right? Like he wants to put
Smash.
pressure and hit the entire time and make you make mistakes, and then he will do mat returns, pick you back up, throw you down. Islam is a bit more in his total style, more conservative, more reserved, right? He is the quote unquote smarter fighter of the two. So he will try to control that position a bit more and be safe in the grappling, right? With Charles Oliveira being a great jiu-jitsu player, when he would threaten some locks and threaten the legs, Islam just bailed out on it, right? He just went, I'm out, stayed safe, and didn't want to further engage in that. So, he really takes that mindset into it, which does make a difference. And he really is big on taking the back, right? We got to see that in his fight, that first fight with Volkanovski, that he will take that and he is fine to control the position, fine to sit there, and he's content to do that. And for the rest of his grappling, the clinch area is going to be such an important position for him. That is where he likes to get a lot of throws, and he kind of has that, like, in each martial art, you get really such a high skill when you get to a high level of things. The kind of sambo, judo superpower you get is really understanding the balance and body mechanics of someone, right? And he has that to the top tier, and he will play off of that and use that. We're mentioning his trips and throws. He will do stuff like do a knee in the clinch to get you to throw a knee back, right? A lot of people get into the, oh, you hit me, let me do something real quick to you. And he will use that to his advantage to then hit you with a big throw. And, now he's back on top. He's in dominant position. And then the other way of getting that takedown is being able to, when people are trying to make that wide base on the cage, getting your knee right in the middle and using that to elevate and pick them up. So that's like the biggest areas of kind of special things he does in that really make the wrestling defense more difficult than just straight being able to stop a double leg.
So I completely agree with your grappling assessment of him. I have noticed his clinch is very strong. And you did mention that he is very good against defense, but I do think that is that Dagestani. I don't know if I want to call it chain wrestling, but it is kind of just sort of chain wrestling, right? Where he goes in, he'll grab a leg, he'll move, and I think that's what I really do respect a lot about him. Is one of his biggest strengths is his grappling. But since we talked about the grappling, we could talk about his striking. For me, some of the things I mean, one, he's a southpaw, which even when we talk about boxing, I'm always like big on southpaws, just because you don't see a lot of them, right? In this match, he's fighting another southpaw, but
Yeah,
usually you don't fight, you don't see a lot of southpaws
it
in the
it
sport.
it does really change up the striking game, right? People are so dominantly right-handed going against
Right.
other right-handed people. Sometimes just simply changing that vision and openings for people can throw off someone's game completely.
So, Stephen, what are some of the strengths of Islam striking that you've noticed in your assessment of him?
This is actually probably the area where he differs from Khabib the most, is that he really did develop his striking game much more than Khabib. You know,
That's fair.
Khabib really kind of wanted to wing it a lot more, and that did give a lot of like advantage to him. Willing to get a little crazy in his fight really did put some things in his favor. Islam, like mentioned before, in his grappling, in his striking as well, very conservative. But he did really work more on those techniques. So he really, as you mentioned, as a southpaw, he uses the classic southpaw kickboxing strategy of basically two parts of it. One are his kicks. So normally
Hmm.
when you're up against the orthodox person, you have that whole open body side to you for those kicks. And he drills them in. We got to see in the second Volk fight that he really saw that opening and went for it at the range. So he does like to be at that kind of long range, really control it. He doesn't want to get too in to the pocket and be swinging with people unless he's really going to engage. So he's fine with 1-2 shots on the outside. So
I do
with
think
that
it's
first,
important to note. Sorry, with
oh
Volk
yeah,
though, I think like there's the height advantage and the reach advantage he had though
yes,
was so significant that he was able to do that. I am
yeah,
just interested. Like I still think he can do it. I just wonder against somebody his own size if it would be. I don't think it'll be as effective as it was against Volk. It's definitely going to be there, but I mean I know I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but with Dustin Poirier, he is looking at a southpaw as well, so that side's not going to be
yes.
open as much, right?
Yeah, because how the southpaw kickboxing attack works is this, right? You have those kicks, and he will kick each level, right? He'll kick the leg, he'll kick the body, and he'll kick the head, right? He did get the head kick KO on Volk, but realistically, his head is like chest level to a lot of other people, but right? But he is willing to do that kick, and what that does is change up your guard and at the range. So when you are in the southpaw orthodox and doing those kicks, when you block kicks, you don't want to block kicks here, right? Even we got to see Dustin in his knockout against Gaethje, where he got kicked out. If you block and your hands close to you, that hit is still going to come through. You're still going to get force coming into you, and even if like you slightly block it and it still can hit your head, we see that all the time. You really want to block it either just being out the way, or you really got to have your hands out. So that's part one of that attack. The second part is the straight left. Because normally, in the southpaw orthodox, the lead hands are closer. It leaves the straights, your backhand, your strong hand, your rear hand, to be more open to come through straight across. So what happens is with the kicking game, you want to have your hands further out. For the
Mhm.
straight punches, you need to have them closer in to be able to block that. So it really kind of lets you play on the different reactions of people. And he's used those very well. He doesn't really like to throw in more than 1 or 2 strikes at a time. And he does have a really good sense of timing, right? He does kind of stay on the outside on almost everyone, right? He's not so aggressive and super engaging in people. But with that timing, he does have good speed. He'll catch people kind of walking and following him, hit them with a quick straight, hit them with a quick jab. And then the next part is how he uses this stuff all together with his grappling. His game really works well together in that he's either on this outside playing this kind of probing game, and then he sets up to be able to get into the clinch to get to his stronger setups. So besides the left straight, he will change some different angles, kind of loop some punches around. One of them is like the classic Fedor punch, where instead of a straight, it's kind of like a weird looping hook overhand,
That's
right?
what I was talking about with the hooker. He threw that against Hooker, and he grabbed his foot and tripped it in order to get tall control on
Yeah.
him.
So he will do stuff like that. I believe they call it the casting punch. It's
Casting
all the
punch.
different names of things, right? But it is just a big looping hand. And what happens with that, we're talking about the southpaw attack, and you'll see this even in boxing too, right? You have people's hands up. You can go around the guard. So
Right.
what he wants you to do is kind of get in that position, and he does the big looping punch. And what happens is you get around the guard, you get around the hands. And in boxing, you might be more crowded. You might lead to like fighting in the more in that box. In UFC and MMA, it means you're getting into that clinch. It means you're getting immediately into that grappling exchange. And what happens is a lot of people are really drilled into them, especially against other wrestlers. You want the underhook. You don't want the wrestler being able to drop down, get to your legs. So they drill that so hard. So he gets the hands on them. They go under. He uses that overhook himself. He will use that overhook and get control for his throws, right? He doesn't care which hand he gets. As long as he has that hand on you, he has already an advantage. The next part he does is switch that to the collar tie, where he's getting that hand behind your head to push down. And he can hit some pretty hard uppercuts immediately, right? When you have that down and have your legs beneath you, you can really drive up those punches. So even if he isn't the most powerful guy, he is kind of hitting people with way more force than they expect in that.
Well, I would argue those are probably some of his best punches, like based on some of his last fights that I saw.
100%.
Like those are the ones like not necessarily most effective, but they're definitely the most where they've landed the cleanest. And yeah, I mean, I guess in retrospect it would be the most damage, but it's just like, because I guess my thing with his striking is that, he does utilize both, right? Like you mentioned with the wrestling and the striking in order to get himself into an advantageous position. But he's not sitting there. He's not going to one punch knock you out. You're not really worried about that. He's more throwing punches to set up for something else.
Yeah.
Or in Volk's case, he threw a leg kick because Volk is, call for what it is. He's kind of smaller for the division. Caught him with a good leg kick. And
yeah, when it comes to kicks, kicks just have so much more weight and power to them.
Well, right.
Yeah. It is just the natural thing of it.
Right.
But even like he has some TKOs and stuff where he has caught people kind of cold walking at him, hands down, quickly hits them with a shot. For the most part, they're not like dead completely, right? There's a couple people he's knocked out, but that's generally, people, you got the button, right? For the most part, he hits you with that one shot and is okay to then like back out.
Right.
Back out or start that grappling exchange. And even with Volk, we got to see Volk kind of duck in more, and he's already, Islam's already good at the clinch. We did find him having good clinch entries and looking for things like knees for people kind of coming down onto him. So he saw that advantage. He saw that kind of read on Volk. It's kind of more obvious, but he was still willing to make that change up and prepare for that type of style and really intercept him with knees, with uppercuts, and grab him while his head is down and hit him with shots in between. So you can see, Islam's game really sets that all up together.
Well, with Volk though, Volk is so aggressive, and he likes to be the aggressor. Like at 145 pounds, he might be able to do that, right? Even though he's so smaller. But I think with Makhachev being so much bigger than him, and the fact that Volk is still trying to push and do that style, Islam naturally likes to be very reserved. And he likes to wait, right? And that's kind of part of his defense is where he'll like to wait and he'll throw a couple shots. But if someone's going to come in, like you mentioned earlier, he's going to cold cock somebody because, like Volk, for example, being aggressive, got caught with a shot. But, I guess since I'm on the topic of defense, what are the things that you notice with Islam when he's... obviously I said he's reserved, but like...
that is the big core of his defense, is that he does keep that range, right? And when you're seeing shots from further away, you do have more of a chance to dodge, kind of move. And that's been a big core of it, is he's controlling that space. So when people are trying to coming in at him, he can, use a little head movement. He's not, bobbing and weaving in the in the pocket, you know what I mean? That's never been his thing. But he has some decent movement. He has some decent reads. He can see some of the shots coming, and that's where like his core of it is. He does take a bit of shots in that still, right? Because you can see there are moments where he sees them coming, he sees the opening for a straight, he sees a moment, and he wants to hit that, right? And he'll be kind of loaded up, ready for that, and he'll eat some shots in return doing that. He wants to check right someone when they're coming in on that.
But it's almost like his style is very like, like I said, it's reserved, but it's almost like, do you think that first knockout loss that he had in his UFC career kind of plays a role in that? It's just because, like, if you look at his style, I haven't looked at his fights before that, but like you can tell that he's like very it's reserved, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like cautious. He's very cautious when he goes.
Yes, yes.
Like he's
he does
constantly
not
setting
want-
up. He's constantly setting up his, like his fatal, right? Or would you call it the cast?
The casting punch.
Yeah, the casting punch. But yeah, it's almost like because I would say like one of his things is like he can definitely be caught, right? It's on record that he got caught with the shot. He wasn't out completely, but he got caught with a good shot coming in. And I think since then he's been very like he's very cautious and very methodical with the way, like you said, with his range. And I'm just wondering, like, because of that, I wonder if that's why he's only throwing 1 or 2 punches at a time rather than throwing combos, like you said, bobbing and weaving and kind of going in there fighting fire with fire.
He
right?
does not want to take risks at all, right? Like that is just in his mindset. He does not want to take risks. And like I said, that's one of those core differences between him and Khabib, where Khabib was like, sure, I'm going to go buck wild on it for a couple of minutes and see what happens, right? And he's just going to trust that he's good enough to get through it. Islam, wanting to be that smarter fighter. And I think that KO happened. I think when he started, he wanted to be more, mini Khabib. I guess it's hard to say mini. I think he's a little bit taller. He's equally as physically impressive, right? He is a strong dude, right? Even, we talk about the Volk fight because that's significant in his only real title defense. But he has been able to body everyone else he's been against in lightweight, equally sized as him. That is just the truth of it. He is physical himself for this division.
Do you see any weaknesses for Islam?
So it's really hard to say for a weakness itself, right? Because his game has worked so well. He only has that one loss and it works all together, right? Very simple, but he's been able to use it to get those wins, right? His like I said, that southpaw attack, being able to set up his grappling into the clinch, into being able to ground people out. I think one of the things is because he doesn't really strike in combination, he is really reserved in that. It can make it easier for people to try to get that adjustment for. You just got to be quick, strong enough, and have the confidence to be able to get through that, which is a daring task.
Well, there's only one person that's been able to do it, and it was happened to be when Islam was going after him. So
yeah,
it would be interesting to see. But standing across from him in the cage is Dustin Poirier, and does Dustin Poirier have the tools in the shed to get that done? I mean, I think that's the question, right? Dustin he's been in the UFC for a really long time. He's a veteran of the sport. He's fought in the best of the best. He's knocked out my cousin twice.
Well, he brought the beating. Okay. He brought the beating on him.
Right. Just looking at Dustin in itself, like if I want to just like, I know we're gonna get into striking, but just off the top of my head, like when I think of Dustin, it's like I think the challenge of this fight is that he's fighting a wrestler. I mean, obviously it's not Khabib, right? Because he's fought Khabib and lost, but Islam still is a wrestler and can grind out those rounds. Like some of the biggest wrestlers that he's fought, I feel like haven't really wrestled him a whole lot. If that makes sense.
Yeah, you got to see that on his record, right? Gaethje, the mythical NCAA champ, all this thing.
He doesn't like to wrestle. He doesn't
like to wrestle.
Michael Chandler doesn't like to wrestle. All of a sudden, it's like
right. Yeah, he left Bellator, went to the UFC, and went. What's going to get me famous? Being buck wild and crazy. Let's
get
go
knocked out every other fight. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. He is an amazing wrestler. Didn't use it at all in that. Eddie Alvarez is kind of the one, besides Khabib, that wanted to wrestle Dustin a little bit more to switch up the kind of stances, kind of get Dustin thinking about it. He did get, I think, 1 or 2 takedowns in those fights, but didn't hold it. Wasn't able to do anything.
Though, dude. Dustin pieced him up.
Eddie is not the same caliber of wrestler as Islam, Khabib, or even someone like Martush Gamrot, or even like Armin right now. Eddie is not as good as those type of guys. Dustin has got to fight, all of the violence group of lightweight. He fought Dan Hooker at his very best, so he's really gone through wars in this, and he's already a legend, right? Like, I love Dustin Poirier. His move to lightweight and seeing his rise up was fantastic to see. I got to see him knock out Bobby Green live. It was a fantastic moment. I love the dude, and he's not without positives in this fight, and he has probably some of my favorite striking in the UFC.
Well, he is great. Like, he is great. I guess boxing for the UFC, right? Because there's a caveat, because boxing and boxing in the UFC is a little bit different. We kind of talked about that at lunch without getting much further into it.
Yeah.
Because that was like an hour conversation. But, Dustin, for what the UFC is, does have good hands. I will say like that. He has great hands, right? Whereas a lot of his stuff is he's over there fighting guys, he's getting them on the cage, and he's putting them out. I don't like when he goes for the guillotine. But,
God.
I mean, I think that's the biggest thing.
God.
Like Islam's talked about it. It's like he doesn't need to be pulling that. I don't think he's even actually tapped out anybody with that. He has a good Darce choke.
He's literally never succeeded in getting the guillotine in
Maybe
his
that's
MMA
why he wants
career.
To do it. Maybe that's why he wants to do it. But I think I can confidently say that he does have better hands than Islam does as far as boxing is concerned. And obviously, I would say Islam's a better wrestler. Not saying Dustin can't, but I don't think that's Dustin's strong suit, right? Dustin is good. If he gets you on the ground and he's able to get a hold of you, he's going to put you up. Besides if he throws up a guillotine. That's a caveat right, to all this. But his hands and when he's on the cage and he puts pressure. The thing with Dustin is if he hurts you, he's gonna finish the fight. And I think that it's like his X factor, right? Where it's like his ability to be able to finish fights and put you in the position where you're either out on your feet or he's going to make the ref step in. Because a lot of his fights and a lot of his wins, he's basically overwhelming the guy. And he's catching these dudes with his uppercuts, hooks. And he doesn't, like, remember with Usyk, we talked about how he throws from angles. Dustin's really good at throwing from different angles. And I think that's one of his X factors as well, like I talked about with Usyk in the last episode, is that because he's not just throwing here. He's throwing weird, up, straights to the side, and he's just throwing everywhere. And then he really utilizes the body shot. And I think that is really nice because I forget who he was fighting, but he threw a mean body shot and he just made the guy crumble. It was like a couple years back. It was a big, tall guy.
But he really wore on Gaethje with him too.
Well, right. When their first fight. The first fight.
Yeah,
the second fight, Gaethje just...
he's willing to... I mean, Dustin was still doing good in that fight before getting blasted out, right? Like, that's the reality. Dude. Yeah.
Right.
He got ducked right into that
caught,
head kick.
Dude.
Yeah. And, that's one of those, they fight again. I still go Dustin in that fight, right? I think it's close and it's got it closer, right?
Yeah,
but I think I still go Dustin because one of the biggest things that when Dustin left featherweight, went up to 155, he did really take time. You could see if you look at the old pictures from when he first changed up to now, he really did change his body to match 155, right? He's not super huge for the division or anything, but he did fill out. He is a good size for this. His power did transfer well, right? He doesn't, one shot spark out a lot of people, but he can hurt you with any punch, right?
I would argue he has more strength or more power than Islam does, though.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Right. Like he does and he has a better technique in landing. And one of the biggest changes for him that, he used to struggle with, even before the like Michael Johnson fight, and then he kind of changed it up, was the change of he used to just want to like hold hands up, block, shell up. He was taller in featherweight, so he can just do the lean back. He really changed his game to be able to look at punches coming at him. And that's something so many fighters in the UFC don't do, right? Even in professional boxing, we have some people who can't really be under fire and throw back well. But, that's just a difference in that sport where you have to be able to fight in that pocket, be able to respond because you're going to be everything up close. A lot of people in MMA aren't really able to do that, right? Because you're fighting at such long ranges, you can kind of be in the basic of like, you go, I go. Dustin really put that as one of the skills to work on, to where he's going to see the fight, he's going to see the shots, and he's going to respond. And that's where, his counterpunch is good. And that's where the next big thing that's pretty unique to him is the way his defense is. He uses sort of that more wing guard, elbow defense and shoulders, right? We talk about boxing here.
Well, he goes like this. He goes.
Oh, yeah. We talk about the different types of, fighting. And in boxing, you do have the gloves, right? Which give you more mass to block shots. And there should still be shots that come through the middle. We see that all the time. But it just gives you more mass. If you hold your hands up, you do the earmuffs, you can block a lot more mass. We're talking about with the kicks, earlier. The full 4-ounce gloves don't block a lot if you're just here. So what does block a lot of things is your shoulders and elbows. When he fought Max Holloway talked about how weird it was to fight him like that and how much he was hurting his hands, hitting those big bony parts, right? Punch someone's elbow, it hurts, right? You have your big shoulders, they just come so much in the way, and he'll bring his hand down, do this stuff, cover up and block a lot more shots and keep some of his hand ready to throw in between where you're talking about those weird angles, right? He has it in between, will shoot it up from low and land a good shot on people. And with him being able to keep that vision and be able to stay calm under fire really changed his career around. And that's what really gave him that edge against the violence group, or, against Gaethje, against Eddie
Right.
Alvarez, against Chandler. He had a lot of success against Charles Oliveira until, Oliveira was able to survive it and then get his back and then kind of dominate him from there. But his striking, put him on an edge in each one of those fights, against Benoit Saint Denis, who was putting pressure on, just trying to like blast him out. And even in between his terrible decisions of going for the gilly, he found openings in between and was just able to find that and blast Saint Denis in between those. That is such an important skill.
I really feel like his experience is what won in that fight, though. He let Benoit just kind of go out there and start gassing himself and going for it. And he came back in and just handled business.
If his defense wasn't good enough to survive that, there's a lot of people where Saint Denis is just going to be able to like full force go forward at people, and he's just going to win a lot, right? There's going to be up until even in the ranked people, there's going to be people just,
Well, he's just so big too. I mean, I think that's the thing for the division. He's just a big dude.
Yeah.
And Dustin, I mean, like I said, I really feel like it was his experience of, having those wins and having a lot of those losses and learning from them, that he was able to be like, okay, I'm the vet here. This kid's going to gas out. Right. On top of his good defense, but I'm saying he knew exactly what he needed to do. He took an ass whooping for the first round.
Yeah.
And he went back out there and he was like, all right, let's go. And
he still landed some shots. Him being on the back foot, I mean, he does have good counter. It did take away some of the other, skills he had in that moment, especially he was up against the cage so much in that.
Right.
He does have basic kicks. They're not good, traditional kicking styles.
That's
but
fair.
You don't really have
That's
to
fair.
be a very like technical kicker to calf kick someone, right? It's the closest and easiest spot to get that's really hard to grab, right? If you're going to really reach down for a calf kick, it does kind of get dangerous if you're doing that so often, right? So it's not the best, but he'll throw it, he'll hit hard, he'll hit the body, he'll switch it up on there. And the other thing he really loves to do and will throw off a lot of people is switching his stance and shifting with his punches. So Poirier is another southpaw in this, right? He does like to jab. He does do the pawing game. But one of the things he will do is step with his left straight, or even if he does it as a hook, he'll step in with it and then load up the right hand right after to nail people. And just the being able to move that much ground has really thrown off a lot of people who think like, oh, okay, let me take a little step back. They are already in a position caught out, and he's able to land that a lot on people.
Well, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier, is that like Poirier's boxing is just, boxing or his hands, his technique for MMA, because like I said, I have to keep saying the caveat because we do cover boxing as well.
Yeah.
But it's not like the boxing from traditional. But you remember, it's a little bit different. It has to be modified because you're taking in takedowns into consideration when you're throwing. But Dustin is able to go in, and he does, like you said, he does change his stance, and he's going to change his angles to set up his next shot. And I think that's one of his X factors, and I kind of said it earlier, is because he is able to be like, okay, I'm going to throw this, and he's going to react like this, so then I'm going to come and throw it here, or I'm going to throw it here.
Yeah,
oh, he's going to leave his body open, then I'm going to hit a hook to the body. Or, he's constantly finding an open shot, and he knows that if he throws a certain punch, one area is going to be open, whether it's the body or it's the head. And I think that's what really makes him very, very successful and has made him be at the top of the division for so long.
And one of those other X factors is kind of the thing where we're talking about Islam on Khabib, where Khabib had that little bit of crazy factor. Dustin does have a little bit of that crazy factor, right? He's like 80% technical, 20% a little crazy, right? He's not everything perfect technique, but just being able to like willing to like go out and throw and go hard sometimes can put things in your favor.
Well,
right,
he's Louisiana born and bred, my guy. Yeah, that's why.
And where like Islam is so unable. Well, I don't know if he's unable to do it or just so unwilling to do that.
Right? I think he's unwilling to do it because he knows that I think if he were to fight fire with fire, I don't want to say he doesn't have a chin, but it's really been proven that he can get knocked out. I mean, anybody can get hit and knocked out when they get hit in the button, but I don't think he wants to go out like that. So I think for him, he'd rather be reserved. Take it to the ground, do 1-2 punches, and then eventually, I mean, he's gonna. He takes you to the ground. I don't think most people are not going to get back up. Maybe besides Khabib. But
yeah, Dustin is not a slouch on the ground, right? Like he hasn't fought a lot of like super wrestlers, and that's part.
Well, he's a Brazilian black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt. So I mean,
he does have good chokes, right? He got a lot of like career wins by like Darce choke, things like that.
But those are offensive, not on the back though, right?
Yeah, well, it's part of the getting the head control and really going for that when people are diving in for those takedowns, right? And a lot of
Right.
that is kind of like anti-shooting it, right? That's where that skill kind of comes in, is he really wants to desensitize, he does not want you to dive in. So he's going to be, I'm going to threaten this choke, and make you second think that.
But I guess what I was saying is more like off of his back, though. It's not like a Nick or a Nate, like a Cesar Gracie.
Oh,
Brazilian
yeah.
Jiu-Jitsu.
He's not
gonna go into rubber guard and start trying to set up a triangle choke, right? He's more of like, if you're gonna come towards me, like you said, and that's why I figured it's more to me. Well, I guess I'm not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, but if someone was gonna go in, I feel like that's more offensive. I mean, I guess it could be defensive, but I guess when I think defensive, I'm thinking he's on his back, laying down, and he's trying to throw up a rubber guard.
Different styles, right? There is a bit of, like I said, going for those front head chokes can be a more dominant position. When it came to his wrestling, he did have the more traditional MMA style of like, I'm going to wall walk, I'm going to get to the cage, I'm going to get a wide base, I'm going to lock my legs in. And that is the exact area that Khabib and the Dagestani boys, the AKA boys, because I guess, that expands out further than them, right? You go, DC and all them too.
Right.
They really learned to kind of get past that. And that's where his traditional skills have been at. And we got to see in his Khabib fight, Khabib was still able to take him down. He was able to get up and kind of fight his way up. But, it still, every few minutes he's down there, it's going to eat away time. It's going to take away strength. Charles Oliveira was able to, is a phenomenal Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, right? He's beyond the regular, right? And he's a master at getting the back and controlling you from there. And he is such a good, at finishing those submissions and really going for it. I don't think Dustin has that same thing. And I swear, if he drops on a guillotine on this, I'm going to lose my mind. Because
I'm willing to bet you lunch that he drops a guillotine in the fight. I have a feeling he's going to.
I don't know if he can stop himself, because I have to imagine this is something he gets all the time in training, and he just feels it, right? Oh, I timed it. I got my hand under, did it. When you're going against other amazing grapplers, it is a very hard submission to finish, right? It's not impossible. You can get it dead to rights and just squeeze your arms out. But unless you have it perfect, you're not taking them out immediately. And if you're not taking them out immediately, that's all those moments they get to kind of wiggle out. We got to see it with Khabib, right? Just able to kind of wiggle through, get some space. And if you can do that, you're safe, right?
Right.
Saint Denis got out of like 6, right?
Yeah, I remember.
It's insane.
It's like he was just trying so hard to get it, and it's just like, dude, it's.
And he felt confident that he can get back up against Saint Denis. The problem is, if you do that and fail, and you didn't eat up all the time of the round left,
right,
you're just putting yourself in a bad position, right?
That's fair.
You're just putting yourself on the ground, in which that's exactly where Islam's going to want him, right? He'll be fine grinding him out, controlling the legs, controlling the wrist directly after. And I think that could spell doom for Poirier.
Well, I mean, since we're talking about him jumping the freaking guillotine all the time, right? I mean, I think that's one of his negatives, right? It's him. He's probably gonna like I said, I'm willing to bet lunch that he's gonna do that. I mean, and just going back and looking at the fights, like, I wouldn't say his defense is overly impressive. I mean, he has good shoulder, his rows, and that's impressive, but he does get touched up. I mean, he has been knocked out. And I would argue too, I think his chin's probably better than Islam's. I mean, we don't know, right? We don't know.
Yeah.
We're going to see. But he has been pieced up before, and his body has been open as well. I mean.
Yeah, I think Islam's going to take whatever free shots he can get in this.
Right.
I think he's seen that, like, he is willing to adapt, smart fighter. I think he's going to see that Dustin has those openings to the body, right? Because in this, he's blocking his head so much and wanting to get those counters and waiting for it. That, he does get hit. He's not the fastest man, right? He doesn't, he has decent head movement. He's not super, dodging everything, right? So in his looking and waiting, he does get popped in that quite a bit. So those are definitely some weaknesses there. Besides, like I said, I don't want to say his grappling is a weakness, but it's just, is it good enough to stop Islam? And
no.
That's such a big ask,
I can probably guarantee he's going to be taken down at some point. Like, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's like without a shadow of a doubt. If you want to look up the matchup between these two, I mean, because we talked about them, right? Both Islam, and we talked about Dustin. And if you look at them, I think it's pretty clear. I know I'm kind of using some of your words here,
Yeah.
but like, if you would have asked me this, at lunch, I would have been like, well, Dustin wants to stand. Islam's going to want to go to the ground. And I think that's pretty blatant. I think most of the casual fans who are going to watch this fight are going to be like, yeah, Islam's going to want to take him down because Poirier's got hands, right? What do you think is going to happen? Like, what are your thoughts? Not necessarily your prediction yet, but more of like looking at them matched up in the scenario that's going to be on Saturday. How do you see the fight playing out?
So I think we're definitely going to see Islam start in his conservative way. And I think we're going to see, and I think, so this is the Southpaw versus Southpaw matchup. And I think this is going to be more difficult for Islam. Islam isn't one to like probe and jab a lot. He wants to kind of do those 1 or 2 strikes, where Dustin really does, he's going to shoulder feint. He's going to paw the hand. He's going to jab. And I think Poirier having a more developed jab in building his boxing and combinations, because you're now basically the same as Orthodox, where the jab is more available. I think the jab will be in Dustin's favor. So I'll allow him to kind of touch and build off of that. I think one of the big questions is going to be can Dustin use his leg kicks and kind of slow down Islam a little bit? Because I think that's going to be something. Can he take away some of the mobility and take away some of the like strength in it?
You think he's going to go for the calf kick?
I think so. I think that's something that has to be in it. The other thing,
who did he hit that on? Was it Connor?
He hit it on Connor a bit. So that's one of like more recent
until Connor's leg snapped.
yeah. Well, depends on, he did it on each of the fights, right? When he sees a heavy leg, he'll do it. He hasn't been afraid to do it on generally other fights. He just hasn't like concentrated on it. He did it against Max Holloway, another person who was very big on like being lead foot heavy. Islam not being as lead foot heavy, he is not the quickest. So I mean, I think it will still get him. I'd argue
Poirier is probably more lead leg than Islam is.
Yeah, Dustin is. Because of that boxing style, right? It is kind of something that goes along with it. I think one of the interesting things also is because of that shifting punch he likes to do, that may actually open up that right hand for a bigger shot, right? Because he's going to step in with that left, which is going to load up the right hand, which is now you're an orthodox versus southpaw, which leads that open for that straight. The thing with that is we got to see, against the smaller guy in Volk, whenever, I guess not every time, but Islam was able to see kind of that duck in, that shifting punch. And when he did it, he intercepted him with knees and got him into the clinch and took advantage of them there. So if Islam is able to stifle that, I think that makes it a rough night for Dustin, because that is, I think, his biggest trick in this is being able to, Islam, being away, wanted to kind of step back, kind of be away from the danger. And if he's trying to do that and getting surprised by Dustin being able to step into his space, he can land some big shots and hurt him. If Islam is so comfortable just timing it and controlling his head as soon as it's down, I think Dustin's dead in the water, unfortunately, right? If Islam can control those moments and get him to the clinch and start that grappling exchange, or even just hurting him in the clinch, right? I think once you're there in the collar ties, it kind of takes away a bit of Dustin's boxing ability, right? If you're just there punching each other, and I think Dustin has a better puncher's chance in that. But if he gets too caught up in engaging in that striking, Islam's going to switch it to the legs, hit the trips, hit the throws.
Right. That's what I was going to say is that I think that, like, the way I like just picture it happening is that I think Dustin's going to have to be the aggressor here. And that's only because I feel like Islam is not going to be aggressive. So they're going to be circling each other. So Dustin's going to go push in. And I feel like he might get caught with a counter just because that's what Islam does.
Yeah.
And he's going to make you come and fight him. But Dustin's not going to try to take him down. I just don't feel like that's going to happen. I don't think it's realistic. Dustin wants to stand. And I don't think really Islam is threatened if he does for some reason get taken down. Obviously it's not Khabib, but it's just different, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know he's going to throw those punches, but like I said, I wonder if he goes in for something like that, if Islam's just going to throw a quick counter, or would be his right? He would throw a quick counter right hook. He's
definitely going to throw it.
And just kind of catch him off balance. But I think we should go into predictions, and I'll go first this time. I'll let you do first on the second one, but on this one,
yeah.
I don't know why, But I guess I'm also looking at Islam's record and as many times as like his submissions. But I feel like I was gonna say submission by the second, but I feel like that's too early. I think it'd be submission in championship rounds.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking because Dustin has been susceptible to getting submitted. I think Khabib also submitted him. Yeah, Khabib also submitted him. I do think Islam's going to get him on the ground and just probably, whether it's an arm or something, he's going to tap him out.
Yeah, I think Dustin does hit that cage also too much, or gets too caught up going there, which I think is going to be deadly for him. I think we'll see him have success first round, like we have seen him against some of the other guys he's been up against. But I think I'm going to go Islam submission third. I think he hurts them.
Championships.
Yeah, I think yeah. I'm gonna go one. I think it'll happen sooner, right? Because I think
it'll happen before championship rounds.
Yeah, I think it'll happen before championship rounds. I think he can kind of stun Dustin, and I think that just opens up the door to have him put the pressure on. I think unfortunately Dustin has kind of crumbled in those moments on the ground when people have been able to control him, kind of be able to threaten him on that. It hasn't been a lot of people, but, it's just the caliber of who he's fighting against. I love the guy, but I don't think he can really get through all the questions of Islam.
That's fair. But like we said at the top of this, it's plus 350. So, I mean, or 375.
Better than a puncher's chance.
Yeah, it's plus 375. I mean, I think like if you got $100 and you're going to throw $100 down, I mean, you're not going to put it on Islam unless you're doing a parlay. For parlay reasons, I definitely take Islam, but for, hey, I got $100, I'm going to throw it on somebody for a dog, throw it on Dustin, because I think that's where you're going to maximize your money and make 375 out of $100.
He will land. He's going
to. He could knock him out. He has the power to knock him out. And if Islam just slips up one way and Dustin just catches him with a shot, I mean, that's it. It's going to be lights out.
He's going to hit Islam, right? That there's no question of it. It's just a matter of, does he hit him with a super
on the
shot
button or clean or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's too good to be shut out, right? I think he will land. He will hit some good shots. It's just whether he can maintain it and can he actually finish from there.
Right. But very quickly, we're going to get into the next fight. So the next fight is the co-main. It's a 5-rounder. I don't know why they're doing this. That's like it's not about. I was like, I know there's like special occasion where there's like Nate, because Nate likes to fight 5-rounders, right? If he could fight 10, he'd fight 10 because the boy doesn't get tired. He'll take a beating just to beat you at the end. But you got Sean Strickland, who's 28-6, former middleweight champion, recently coming off his loss against Dricus du Plessis. And it was a split decision. It was a close fight. I was like, I don't know if I want to get into all that, but it was a really close fight, and I could have saw it go either way, so I wasn't really mad. But personally, I think I had Strickland winning that. And then against Paulo Costa, who's 14-3. They're both 6'1". It's really interesting because usually Paulo Costa looks a lot bigger. I mean, he walks around heavier, but he looks really tall and big.
Yeah.
I think it's just his definition of his muscles. But he's a plus 180 dog. And the reach advantage is actually for Strickland, which I think is interesting and something to be kind of looking at. But Paulo Costa's takedown defense is 75%, dude. Not like either of them are going to take each other down, but I mean, it's just, that's crazy. That's high.
And he has really short arms, right? I think it's probably part of his build. Super built, short T-Rex arms with it. He's just super strong, and I think that's definitely aided. Yeah, and that's definitely aided him. I think in his takedown defense that he's just a Hulk at that division.
He's super strong, right? Just super strong. But very quickly, so like I mentioned earlier, he lost a split decision to du Plessis. He beat Izzy in that fight in September that everyone was just like, what the hell just happened? Like, I'm a big Izzy fan, but like, I don't know if it was Izzy having a bad night or just Strickland was like, it was the best day of his life and he was just going for it. But Izzy like literally didn't have an answer for him in that fight. And Izzy got his ass handed to. I'm going to mess up this name so bad. He fought Magomedov.
Magomedov.
There you go. Thank you. Knocked him out. Man, all these mobs, dude.
Imavov.
Thank you. But, we remember him losing to Pereira. I don't know why he would try to strike with him, but tried to strike with Pereira. Dude knocked him out in the first round. I was like, I saw that happening. And then he lost a split decision to Cannonier. But besides those 3 losses, like he is the former champion. He's beaten Uriah Hall, Brendan Allen. I mean, Hermanson, that's another. It was a split decision, but Hermanson's still a good, guy up there. So he just has some notable wins. And then Paulo Costa, he hasn't been as active. He started off really strong. I think he was like 10-0, and then he is a 10-0 or 12-0, and then he ended up fighting Izzy for the belt after his win against Yoel. And then Izzy knocked him out, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
Did his little dance on him. Then he lost to Vettori. Vettori just basically, out wrestled him, and that was a weird fight too. But and then he beat Rockhold, but I would argue that Rockhold was at the end already and didn't really look the greatest.
He literally retired after that.
It was. And then he had a really good fight with Whitaker, and I think honestly, since his like KO streak that he had from 2017 to 2018, like this is the best. He lost to Whitaker, but he looked really good regardless. Whitaker's just 1A, 1B, right? When it comes to him and Izzy when they fight. Izzy just happens to have his number, but he looked good in that loss. I know sometimes it's really hard to say, but he looked really good. He had some really good leg kicks.
Yeah.
He utilized the cage. Just Rob is just a little bit quicker and faster, and that's always seemed to be Paulo's weakness, is guys who are a little bit quicker than him.
Yeah, he really showed some good skills in that. That's where kind of that plus for him, right? He took so much time in between these fights, right? He did the Izzy fight, waited a while, did the Vettori fight, waited a while, did the Rockhold fight, waited 2 years.
A year and a half, and then
right. So it's in this weird, you never know what Costa you're gonna get, right? Because he's come out and he brings it to his fights, but all the drama, all his memes, all the secret juice, all this stuff.
Are we getting the wine Costa, or are we getting the powerhouse Costa? Right. I mean, in this last fight, granted, it's just Robert Whitaker who would be champion if it wasn't for Izzy.
Dude, Dreykus already finished.
Whitaker. I don't know. I think
he ran through
Whitaker,
him in that. I think Whitaker can do better.
I think Whitaker beats him in a rematch, though. I just think Rob was having a bad night, to be honest. I remember that now that we're talking about it.
Well,
that was another weird one. That was just another weird one.
Well, there's sometimes those matchups with people are weird, right? Dreykus is a weird dude. He's super athletic, super strong.
The way that his stance and the way that he throws is really weird. It doesn't look pretty, but he gets the job done. Yeah,
and he throws himself into punches. He does a lot of interesting stuff that isn't strictly like the most technical, but it works for him, right? And then he is willing to like mix things up, right? He was able to just like throw Whitaker, and I think it's one of those when you catch someone confused, that can be under lead. And that's something Strickland has been able to do the last little while, right? Is famously people on the internet loved talking about it on his Izzy fight, but talking about the Philly shell. And
the one thing that Ryan doesn't know how to do, but he tries.
Oh, man. I think there's plenty of things Ryan doesn't know how to do, but the Philly shell is on the top of that list of what he thinks he knows how to do. Right.
Oh, man.
Even
I'm gonna help myself.
Even Sean is kind of like in a weird situation with it, because is he the best at it? No. But it is something kind of unique in the MMA world, right?
Well, in the UFC, he might be. I think that's fair. I would argue it's probably Mayweather.
He's someone.
Time, that's Mayweather. That's
that's where it is, right? But just like since it's not common and it's a difficult thing to do, there's plenty of people who want to do it and just get smoked on it, right? The fact that he's here, I think, throws things off, right? I think that's something that threw off Izzy. Izzy is someone who wants to get those reads and just feels like, oh, I'm better than these fighters. I can play on them. I can play on feints. I'm going to catch you. Strickland didn't give him a lot to work off in that game, right? Strickland really reserved himself to not so many strikes just out in the open, nothing just plain, right? When he got knocked out by Pereira, it was in one of those like wanting to overparry, wanting to like catch and move things while he has his hands down, Pereira was able to do that, get around it, catch him with that hand down, and blast him with the left hook that, we've talked about Pereira's power can, just end probably anyone in the UFC, right?
Well, I think with that fight, though, it's like if you have a wrestling, that's literally his weakness. Like when you see him lose his fight, he really got taken down. And it's like, why? I don't know. I think that's what bothers me sometimes about, I know this is like going off on a tangent, but like that fight for Strickland was just so dumb because it's like, what Padetta's weakness is. You take him down. Doesn't matter if he's working with Glover. You take him down. You make him work.
Izzy was able to take down Pereira.
That should show you
Yeah.
Just that it's like his defense, his takedown defense isn't very good. It's probably a bit better now that he's been training for a couple years on it, since he started working with Glover. Well, he's been working with Glover, but making that transition from kickboxing to MMA. But I mean, that really hurt Strickland because I mean, it didn't make sense, right? It's like, why would you go against arguably probably the best striker in the UFC right now?
But I think
and
that
try to
goes,
stand and bang with him. I mean,
I think that goes to the mindset of Sean Strickland. If Sean Strickland has one idea for his fights and he ain't breaking away from it, right? He has his Philly shell. He wants to do that. He wants to Paul. And after getting knocked out with Pereira, you know, he worked with him. He had him in training and he really worked on like trying not to overextend himself and make those same mistakes after losing that way. So he is willing to improve on that. But he does that. He wants to jab. He wants to, you know, stick his hand out there. He will do 1, 2s, and 3s versus, you know, so the jab, the straight, the hooks, and he will mix up any combination of those, you know, but those are basically his bread and butter. He is going to have the longer reach, so those straight shots and longer shots are going to work well for him. And he does, when his kicking, you know, also pretty simple. He stands pretty straight, so he is pretty good at checking kicks. He is pretty quick on that, and he does throw a lot of like the teep kick, that like front kick. Kind of hit to the body, hit to the leg. He really stops progression. And he will just he just marches at you all fight. And if we, you know, seeing Pereira's fights before Strickland, he got his like flying knee KO on one of the fights beforehand. But he wasn't like super impressive in the UFC, right? And I think that's one where I think Sean was like, oh, I'm going to fraud check this guy. I'll walk him down. You know, it's going to be nothing special. And I think in his head, he might go like, if things get crazy, you know, I might be able to wrestle him or something, right? That might be somewhere in there, but I don't think that even registered yet. And then he got knocked into oblivion, right? Yeah, before he even had the next thought of like, oh, I'm losing this. It was, oh, I feel all right. There's a calm little fight, you know, whatever. Boom, out.
I just think Pineda was just so big and just, you know, he rehydrates heavy because he's a heavy guy, right? And his reach was just so massive too that there's just too many things like going into the fight where it's like if someone was like, oh yeah, Pineda's gonna knock out Sean Strickland because Strickland's not gonna take him down, and be like, yeah, I would probably bet that 100 out of 100 times. Like that's what's gonna happen.
Pereira's striking is such an echelon above Strickland, realistically, right? Strickland is not like Strickland, for as much as he talks of like, I'm going to put a beating on someone, it's like, okay, you're not going to put a beating by like jabbing them 30 times. Like, if that's all you're going to do, you're not hitting a lot.
Well, that's what made the Izzy fight so weird, is because Izzy I mean, obviously Izzy and Pineda are very similar. Obviously, Pineda has the power. Izzy doesn't really have the power like that, but Izzy has great striking. But for whatever reason that day, he just fell flat. It's different. It is different.
Yeah. Pereira also counters and does that, but he does have more of a like, because he knows he can finish you, he can kind of set up, put pressure, and want to like finish you.
Mm-hmm.
Izzy does do a little bit more point finding. We'll kind of see openings play. Like he plays the game of kickboxing striking, right? Pereira knows he has power and can knock out anyone. And really that's kind of like a big center of it. He also knows that as long as he's hitting, he doesn't need to like super power up a shot, right? He's one of those, he doesn't need to throw 100% into everything. If he hits you with a good shot, he knows he can hurt you. So he really does practice on I just need to land and hit these good things. I can do good timing. So like Strickland can frustrate a lot of people and just not giving them the openings that they think. But, you know, it is not a very complicated game. He is very honest with everything. You know, he has a BJJ black belt. He is a Brazilian.
I was just going to mention that. Yeah.
And he's never going to use it. He's like,
well, he has wrestling too. He has pretty decent wrestling.
And yeah, you can see training.
Use it.
Yeah. You know, you see him in the gym. You see him work with like other famous jiu-jitsu practitioners. And he just is like, whatever, that's not what I'm going to do. Right. Like he just moves on from it. And he's like, I want to beat people. And he beats people by jabbing them 1,000 times, right? Like he doesn't even land that much, right? He jabs and probes and is very defensive and calm with it, and he can do that for 5 rounds, which really helps him because Costa also only has one way of fighting.
And that's fair. You know, next is Paulo Costa, and you know what Paulo Costa is going to do? Another guy who has a freaking black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu who doesn't freaking use it, who could probably wrestle based off his size and his strength, doesn't use it. He's the hook king, my guy. He's the hook
Yeah.
king.
He's on those short arms, wants to come up and just slug you. And to be fair, when he's in those moments, very good, right? When he's hitting you, we'll switch targets, we'll hit the body, we'll pressure you, we'll kind of sit in front of you on that cage. He hits physically strong, shockingly fast, has an amazing chin. He got blasted by Yoel Romero,
right?
And no problem, sticking his
Rob
tongue out, whatever. Yeah,
Rob
Rob
blasted
pieced him up. Well,
Izzy blasted him.
Yeah, and that's where like the thing is, as long as he's hitting you, like even against Vettori, where Vettori was able to just like eat it all and continue the tide, as long as Costa was hitting and feeling it, he can just keep it going, right? He will beat up your body on both sides. He will hit you on both sides. He's shot, like I said, he's quick. Well, he wants to crowd you into the cage, but he wants that all the time. Right. And if you could take that away, that really hurts. Right. With that Whitaker fight, we got to see him look good where he looked fast. He had all that. He seemed a little bit calmer in it.
Yeah, because it seemed like I don't know if his coaches told him something or what, but he kind of almost like took a breath and he was just like, okay, let me calm down for a second. Because he was throwing some really good leg kicks. Head kicks, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, really in general, all his kicks are so fast.
One thing we didn't mention, though, and something when I was looking back at his fights, he has a really good uppercut. And he has a really good uppercut in the clinch. When he hits a hold of you, that's why I'm surprised he doesn't utilize more of his tools. Is because if he can get you in the clinch, he throws hard. When he gets someone on the cage, that's when he got all his knockouts. When he knocked out 4 guys in a row.
Yeah.
He was hitting the guys up against the cage and just blasting them on the cage. But he doesn't, I don't know what it is. I don't know if he just likes being able to stand and bang, right? Because people are just like that, right? Yeah. You want to look back to, a long time ago. Yeah. That's what was kind of the go-to is people want to stand and bang. And that's where
it was kind of shocking with the Whitaker fight that he was kind of pulling it back a little bit. Because someone as strong as Yoel, he still went for it, even if he was getting hit, right? Whitaker, way more movement, right? He's faster on his feet. He wasn't fully like in and out in that fight. He was willing to kind of sit with Costa a little bit. And I don't know if Costa like felt the power of Whitaker that made him put pause, or if that was kind of more the strategy of like, let me not just go buck wild and burn my gas tank out with someone like Whitaker, who's going to be able to go all the rounds. It's shown he is tough as anyone comes in that division to like eat those shots. I mean, he kind of proved to himself that he can still take those shots in that fight, which I think gave Whitaker a little bit more confidence to like, oh, I can sit here with you. Because as strong as Costa is, he doesn't really like one-shot blast people, right? He does pummel people, really wear on them. So that's one where like, I don't know if he has the same potential to just catch Strickland with one big shot when it comes to a punch. When it comes to his kicks.
I think it depends though, right? And I think that's where it's like, because I don't think Costa's really been able to hit somebody good. Besides when he was on his knockout streak, he was able to hit him good, right? He hit him on the button. So I think he does have one punch power, but I think because he's had to step up in competition since, that a lot of these guys like Whitaker, like Izzy, like Romero, are a little, obviously Romero's a little older. He was old then, but now he's older, so it would be the same. But Sean has been knocked out. I think if Costa throws a leg kick or a head, I say head leg, but he uses his legs to throw a head kick, he could probably knock out Sean. I think if he hits Sean with a clean uppercut, he could probably knock out Sean. But I think if he's going to have any chance in this fight, it's probably going to be him clipping Sean and just finishing the fight. And it's just, is he actually going to go and finish the fight? And I think that's where that's where it's like, for me, it's like, okay, he's a dog, but that's going to be his like key to victory, right? If you want to call it that. That's how he's going to have to finish the fight and win the fight is off that.
Yeah, the way they match up, right? Strickland likes his range. He really wants to demoralize Costa for the most part, right? Costa, like you said, if he's landing and feeling good, he'll take shots. He doesn't care, right? If he's landing on you, he feels like he's getting the better of it, whether he really is or not. I think with Sean Strickland's kind of weird defensive style, his Philly shell for this, he has a chance to really kind of keep it at range and frustrate Costa. What I think is going to be a good idea for him, right? Because we talked about this just in the last fight of your hands and blocking. Strickland with his hands low and doing stuff, I think might leave him open for some of those head kicks, or at least to draw his hands to that position. Because we see there and then we see in the body, right? Costa does really like the body. So those are kind of two areas I see that he can kind of target a little bit more to kind of break down the defense of Sean. And Sean, wanting to be defensive minded, wanting to do that, means he isn't always throwing a lot or landing a lot of big shots, which I think if Costa can have big moments and kind of do those big shots, if he hits him with a big kick and gets to flurry on him, that could just win him a round right there, even if he was losing the rest of it, because Sean isn't really going to be like blasting him for 50 punches in that, right? He's not going to, he might show it, but from what we've seen, he isn't going to just be like berserking people in that. So if Costa can do that, he can definitely steal rounds from it, and he might just knock him out with a big shot. He's shown the power to do it if he's able to kind of even pull away Sean's defenses, kind of break it down, make him rethink it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I kind of agree, I think based on the fact that Sean, and we know what Sean's going to do because he's done it time and time and again, I think that honestly gives Costa the advantage because he knows what Sean's going to do. And I think Costa knows that he's going to be able to take a shot from Sean, even though Sean has a little bit of a bigger reach advantage. I think it's okay because he's not going to be worried about Sean catching him with one shot and putting him out. He's going to be like, you can hit me as much, you can catch me with a shot. I'm not worried about your power, and I'm going to go and I'm going to hit you with something. And good luck trying to take my power. And all it takes is for Costa to land something on the button, and I think that's it. And that's just based on the fact that Sean has been knocked out before. It's kind of like I don't know what the old saying is, but if you keep getting knocked out, eventually your chin becomes brittle, right? It's like, it's not, I don't know how true that is, but I don't know. I mean,
so who are you thinking?
Well, I'm actually going to let you do the prediction first, because I actually, going into this, at lunch, I had told you something different, but I'm actually going to change my mind. So I'm going to let you go ahead. And
I'm going to go this strictly because it's the 5 round. I'm going to go Strickland by decision. I think if this wasn't 5 rounds, I think if this was 3, I think Costa might actually take this, right? I think Strickland's offense not being damaging enough, Strickland not being able to like ward off Costa, and his footwork isn't like incredible, right? I think he will let Costa hit him way too much than he should, but I think Costa just can't keep it up for the 5 rounds if he's going in that more offensive style. If he does that more lay back, stay on the outside, hit some quick shots, I think he'll be able to last the 5 rounds, but then I don't know if he then has the output to win the rounds from there.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from on that. I just think, because I was going to go Strickland by decision, but after talking, and you know how we feel sometimes when after we go through and analyze, I don't know why. I just have a feeling that Costa's going to catch him with a shot. It's not going to be in the championship rounds, right? Well, there's not for a belt, but I'm saying I don't think it's going to be in championship rounds. I think it'll be like in round 3, round 2, where he's just going to catch him because he's going to be like, I have nothing to worry about with this power. I feel like he's just going to catch him with I don't think it's going to be a head kick. I think he's going to catch him with an uppercut, and I think he's going to wobble him and stumble him. And I think that if he jumps on the opportunity, I think that they're going to stop it. That's just what I'm envisioning.
I could definitely see it, right? This one is definitely not as wide a margin for the betting, right? It's minus 220 to plus 180. It's still an obvious underdog and favorite, but Costa definitely has a big chance in it, right?
I think he has a better chance than Dustin does.
Yeah, 100%. This odd, more fair, right?
Right.
Like I said, if Costa had just had like one other fight in between his win with Rockhold and Whitaker, I think we would be able to kind of say, where is Costa really? He is really in the spot. If we
can see him in a win, right? And I think that's the biggest thing. If he were to get a win after Rob, but I think, like I said at the beginning of this, like he looked so good against Rob, even though he lost. It was a different Costa, right?
Yeah.
That I think I'm going to use that momentum, even though it was coming off of a loss. I just feel like he is going to catch him with a shot. Sean has been known to get caught with stuff in the past. I think he lost a split to Jared, right? Cannonier.
Jared Cannonier.
Yeah, Jared Cannonier hits very hard. So
he hits him hard, and Cannonier started out frustrated in those rounds of not really being able to like land on him. When he switched up to the body and really put some pressure on, went into the clinch and hit Sean, is where he really won those rounds. So Costa can definitely see that and see some success, because there's no way he can copy the Dricus style. He can't copy Dricus. Sorry, Griff.
Yeah. But that was close. That was a close fight, though. Like I said, I could have saw it to the point where I think I had Strickland winning that fight. It was close, though. It was 3-2.
Yeah, Yeah, Dreykus being able to like dive in crazy and throw. I mean, even in that, Sean was able to block most of it.
Right.
Costa can't really do that. I think his has to be kind of more methodical, push on him. If he can get it to the cage, it opens it up. But that's hard with the kind of straight shots and spacing that Sean can do.
Just like what is it, Driscus?
Dreykus.
Okay. It's Dreykus. Sorry, Griff.
Yeah.
Just like Dreykus, Costa is a big guy. He throws with power, and he's not going to be afraid of Sean knocking him out. And I think that's going to be the same thing. I don't think this is going to go 5 rounds. So I don't see Costa winning a decision. I think Costa's
there's no way. I don't think his body. I think his body would be like exploding again. I guess he went the 5 rounds with Vettori, but Vettori definitely had the advantage in that one in the later rounds. So, like I said,
like the orc's got cardio, man.
Yeah, they chose 5 rounds for this. I think that's where like the favor for when I see it, I favor
Sean
Strickland.
For sure.
Yeah, because he's the one. Who's
I just have a feeling that someone's
getting
knocked out, and I think that's where it's going to happen. And I think, like I said, I had predicted.
Hey, I would be excited if Costa can beat Strickland. I'm happy for it because I don't think Strickland is that amazing to have been here to be champion and do all this. No. It blows my mind. Right?
No, I think he just caught Izzy on a really bad night, and I think if they fight, 9 times out of 10 again, Izzy wins. It's just I don't know what was going on with Izzy. I'm not trying to sound like a bandwagon fan. It's just that's really my assessment of the whole situation.
Strickland's stuff was just weird to like try to get around. Right? If you're not prepared for it, you're not really mentally on it. Strickland will confuse you would do that, right? Is Paulo smart enough to do this? Right? It's kind of the question.
That's the question, right?
Yeah. Mr. Secret Juice, Mr. Meme Lord Costa.
So that is Saturday, June 1st, live from Newark, New Jersey at the Prudential Center. Tune in. It's going to be some sick fights. I'll definitely be watching. And kind of like I said at the top, please like and subscribe. And those of you who have been viewed and your new viewers, we appreciate you. Steven and I cover the bigger fights for boxing, so usually title fights or top main contender or number one contenders. And then for UFC, we're kind of covering the main event and co-main event, unless there's anything notable like Connor's fighting Chandler or something along those lines where it's something notable of covering. But as always, please go down below, comment, shoot the shit. Let us know what you got going on. Let us know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, even for the other fights, right? I watched the rest of these fights.
Oh, we watched the entire card. It's just more
I could only spend so much time researching every fighter to make this breakdown. But, if any of you guys ever see some of the other prelims or any other those fights that are coming up that you guys are interested in, you could always shoot it on there and I'll tell you what I think.
Well, or, if someone's like, hey, there's this really good up-and-coming fighter, or like they're like, hey, we want you to cover Patty, right?
Yeah,
Patty the Baddie. It's like, okay, well, we'll cover Patty the Baddie.
We'll do it. We'll do it.
But just please comment, please like, please subscribe, please share. That'd be awesome if you can share. And like I said, too, if you want to check out what we have going on, go to www.unfiltered.com. And from there, you can see everything that we have from our last episode, last interviews, which we do have some interviews coming up. But that's on the DL. And Steven's like, we do? To come. But thank you for sticking around. And again, this is the Unfiltered Breakdown. Thanks for joining us. Peace.
Peace out.